Howdy folks, the sprawling world of Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a wonder to behold, but it can be a bit overwhelming at times. With over 30 designated cities, nearly 50 designated villages, and dozens of ports, sanctuaries, and other settlements to explore, Assassin's Creed Odyssey probably has more city environments than any other Assassin's Creed game in the entire series. That's pretty insane, but I've heard some people claim that all of those cities are cookie cutter, very samey. Well, after spending dozens of hours exploring this world and approximately 16 hours recording footage for this video, I've come to the conclusion that not only do the cities in the world of Assassin's Creed Odyssey each have their own distinct character, they're actually a lot more detailed than I think most people give them credit for. So let's take a look at what I consider to be the 10 best, based on their visual design, narrative potential, and gameplay opportunities. Plus their Acropolises, of course. Every ancient Greek city needs a good Acropolis. I'm Kanaju, and these are my top 10 cities in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Quick note before I begin, I'll be sticking to cities as designated by the map legend, so I apologize to the sanctuaries of Olympia and Delphi, two of my favorite locations by the way, that sadly do not qualify. I'm also not counting Atlantis or any of the other DLC cities, we're sticking to Greece. And I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anything. Texan is my first language, but I will try my best. Alright, well, if you saw my previous video on the cities of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you'll know that I just can't help myself. We're starting with number 15. That's right, lightning round of honorable mentions before I get to the actual top 10. Feel free to skip ahead using the time codes in the description if you're in a rush though. So, number 15 is Megara, located in the region of Megaris. This was the first real city I encountered, and it did end up leaving an impression on me. It has all the trappings of a Greek city, just in a smaller package. Number 14 is Gortyn. This scenic city on the island of Crete is famous for its impressive history, wealth, and waterfalls. These cascading waters flow throughout the city in streams and fountains, and they give it the feel of a real desert oasis. The temple complex's location overlooking the valley also makes for an impressive sight. Number 13, Skyros. Located on the island of Skyros, the city of Skyros is quite impressive given its remote location. While its Acropolis is somewhat modest, the neighborhood on the hill below enjoys an impressive amount of verticality, with several layers of rooftops and alleyways to explore. The main agora is also impressive, with the statue of Theseus and the Minotaur overlooking the sea. And yes, I realize Skyros is technically a village, but hey, it's too late to fix it now. At least it's not in the top 10. Number 12, Amphipolis. Located way up at the top of the map in Macedonia, the growing city of Amphipolis offers a lot of variety. While first approaching through the city gates, the impressive avenue of lions leading to a statue of Asclepius instills a sense of power that quickly reveals itself to actually be ambition. While the main temple complex and surrounding villas are well crafted, if still under construction, most of the city's residences are mud brick structures that sort of radiate out from the center. These neighborhoods give you a lot of options when running from guards if, say, you, I don't know, assassinated their leader in broad daylight while he was on a stroll. I originally wanted this city at number 10, but as you'll see, we still have plenty to go. Number 11, Thebes. Thebes is interesting because I also originally thought it would land much higher on the list, but after careful comparison, I actually don't think it's that great. Still, it's one of the largest cities in the game. It features one of the most impressive inner-city temple complexes in the game, as well as the large gymnasium, amphitheater, and stadium. It's a feature-complete city for sure, but a lot of it's spread out and it's a bit tedious to navigate during actual gameplay. Alright, and now begins the actual top 10 list. Number 10, Thasos City. Known as the City of the Champion and located on the island of Thasos, Thasos City is a city with personality. Famous for its Olympic athletes, its gymnasium is one of the most prominent buildings in the city. The statue of Theagenes, an Olympic athlete from Thasos, is the centerpiece of the agora. The city is laid out on a hill, so there are distinct port, residential, and public districts near the bottom, higher class residencies and an amphitheater further up, and finally the Acropolis with temples to Athena, Pan, and Apollo at the top. While the individual districts are mostly separate, the lower portions of the city still provide some of that urban exploration that we're looking for, on this list in particular. Number 9. Kydonia. Returning to the island of Crete, we have a city that I'm sure a lot of you will be surprised to see. Located in the western region of the island, known as Little Egypt, this small port city is a lot different than most others on this list. It doesn't have city walls, for instance. Most of its structures are mud brick, and while it does have a port, agora, and acropolis, the majority of its buildings are in this long cluster in the center. While its story missions and unique visuals are enough to get it an honorable mention, it earns its spot on this list thanks to its high rooftops and deep alleyways. Just take a look at this footage. This thoroughfare runs straight through the city, passes markets and homes. The rug market in particular is one of my favorite locations in the entire game. Don't ask me why. There are tons of nooks and crannies to explore for such a small space. The densely packed buildings also lead to some interesting combat encounters and ambushes and things of that sort. Maybe it's just the desert setting getting to me, but it often feels like classic Assassin's Creed when I'm in this city. Number 8. Tegea. Located in Arcadia, between Pan's Cradle and the Golden Fields, Tegea controls the breadbasket of ancient Greece. The rural country setting gives the city a more rustic feeling. The town seems to be inhabited by farmers and other agricultural folk for the most part. One detail that I especially love is the use of wood throughout the city. Houses are made of wood, public buildings are made of wood. Even the temple of Demeter in Kore atop the Acropolis is constructed of wood. Speaking of which, that's one cool Acropolis. And I may be wrong, but I believe that's one of the largest wooden temples that I've seen in the game. The canopies on the side of the temple are a unique touch too. Tegea is a complete Greek city with all the usual trappings, but it feels more like a traditional fantasy setting, thanks to its wood construction and rustic environment. You know, since wooden structures from this era are practically non-existent today, seeing stereotypical Greek architecture erected in such a way feels oddly unique. Like, of course they couldn't have built everything out of marble, but I never thought about how a wooden city in ancient Greece might look. Also, I love this market that's just sort of grown outside the city gates. It's a nice touch. Number 7. Mytilene. Way up north on the remote and romantic island of Lesbos, we find Mytilene, a grand old city by the bay. Lover's Bay, that is. The city's ancient walls protect a beautiful paradise of blossoming trees and dense civilization. Much like another entry on this list, it's the kind of place I'd love to vacation. If I could. It's too bad Greece is a fictional setting. Oh well. If I were to visit in ancient times, though, I'd find the Sappho School, established by the poet herself. And while most of the homes appear to be mud brick and plaster, a lot of the larger public buildings, including the temple on the Acropolis, are wooden, owing to the island's remote yet wooded characteristics. The port is full of explorable warehouses, the neighborhoods are multi-level with tons of free-running opportunities, and the villas in the upper part of the city enjoy a gorgeous view of Lover's Bay, and the amphitheater beside it. You wouldn't expect to see so large a city this far, up in the map, but Mytilene stands with the best of them. Number 6. Chalkis City. Located on the island of Euboea, this city lands highly on this list both for its beauty and its density. Just take a look at how pretty this is. Chalkis City was one of my favorite locations to quest in due to the density of the city and the side quests on offer. Clusters of mud brick buildings and marble structures are broken up by trees of every color. Combine those multi-story buildings with a subtle uphill layout, and it begins to feel like classic Assassin's Creed. We have markets, a port, a theater, and one of the more impressive acropolises in the game. There are large buildings and complexes to sneak into and connected rooftops to run across. Its agora is actually one of the cooler looking ones in the game, but unfortunately it's tainted by
demonetization.
All in all, Chalkis City is one of those locations I think most players wouldn't think twice about, despite its great gameplay and story. It's a pretty complete package wrapped up in an idyllic fantasy environment. Number 5. Elis. Back to the mainland, all the way to the west, in the region of Elis, we have the city of Elis. Now, this is a Greek-ass Greek city. We have Greek-ass temples, Greek-ass agoras, Greek-ass theaters, and thromi. If you ask me to imagine ancient Greece, this is probably pretty close to what I would imagine. So while this city is a little light on the dense residential streets, it more than makes up for it with large landmark buildings and structures. For the sake of time, I won't get into everything, but we have possibly the largest running track in the game, a beautiful amphitheater overlooking the sea, multiple grand agoras, multiple temples, a gymnasium, markets, and more. Due to its affiliation with the Olympic Games and the nearby Sanctuary of Olympia, Elis is also decorated like a festival everywhere you look. The wide range of unique buildings and festive atmosphere help Elis stand out from other cities and demonstrates just how much love and attention the developers put into every location. Side note, an ancient vacation to Elis seems like it'd be a lot of fun. Number 4. Sparta. Now, some of you may be surprised to see one of the two biggest superpowers at number 4. However, for my personal criteria and taste, Sparta does come in a little weak. Located in Laconia, the grand entrance is nothing short of a showstopper. Rows of impressive statues line the main thoroughfare. Grand colonnades and monuments fill your vision, and they lead your eye up to Sparta's one-of-a-kind Acropolis. One of the first things that jumps out at you is the lack of marble. Instead, buildings and temples are constructed of darker sandstones and maybe granites? I'm not a geologist. There's a lot to like in Sparta. The grand avenues and monuments are a testament to Sparta's success. The tomb of Leonidas is cool, the agora is unique, the throne room of the two kings is pretty neat, and the whole Acropolis complex is one of my favorites in the game. If I could describe the architecture of Sparta in one word, that would be proud. Speaking of pride, Sparta was notoriously wall-averse, leading to the open, spread-out city that we see here. That makes getting around on foot pretty tedious. And as cool as the monuments and buildings are, it just doesn't feel that interesting to explore once you've seen it once. Perhaps I'm putting a little bit too much pressure on it due to its importance in the game, but I was ultimately a little disappointed when I finally arrived in Sparta. I do appreciate the adjacent villages, which serve as suburbs of sorts, Limni especially, but at the end of the day, this is a list of top cities, and I personally feel that there are at least 3 better cities to explore in ancient Greece. Number 3. Argos. These last 3 cities are really in a class of their own, beginning with Argos, located in fertile Argolis, situated at the foot of Mount Coryphe. Argos is a real metropolis. It is here that Odyssey really feels like Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This is a dense urban environment with packed streets and stacked architecture. There are distinct districts to explore too. You have upper, middle, and lower class housing. This area is totally flooded. Cool. There are large avenues, impressive villas, numerous temples, and large areas devoted to metalwork. From a gameplay perspective, you can pretty much cross the city without touching the ground, if you really try. And much like classic Assassin's Creed, there are large interiors to avoid guards in, and places that are much easier to infiltrate from the ceiling. The agora is filled with places to hide and blend in, or you could stalk a target from the rooftops before disappearing back into the sprawl. In other words, it's a fun place to navigate. Overlooking the city are its amphitheater and Acropolis. Now this is an Acropolis. It's high up, it's covered in temples and statues, and its views of the city are unmatched. Well, almost unmatched. The Bloody Oracle also overlooks the city and, depending on how you first enter, serves as a wonderful introduction to this proud city-state. Number 2. Korinth and Akrokorinth. Just over the mountains to the north, in Corinthia, lies the beautiful city of Corinth. Now, for the purposes of this list, I'm also throwing Acrocorinth in as this city's Acropolis complex, but, that's not a big deal. Before you even enter the city, you'll pass workmen collecting clay from the river in support of the city's lucrative pottery trade. There's a cemetery just outside the gates, which was something I was expecting to see more often, to be honest. Upon entering the city, you're greeted by lush pink color that permeates every part of the city, from the banners to the canopies to the trees. While not as consistently dense as Argos, Corinth offers plenty of streets and buildings to explore from top to bottom. The famous Fountain of Mytilene is one of the city's most notable landmarks. It sparkles beneath the gaze of the impressive Temple of Apollo, which lies at the city center. Heading north from the temple, you'll arrive at the port, full of explorable warehouses which are themselves filled with pottery made right here in the city. There are kilns for firing the clay and large neighborhoods of residences for working folk. If you head south of the temple, you'll find the Agora and Dromos, the city's track. A rather unique feature of Corinth, as far as this game goes at least, is the district known as the Porneion. Here you'll find both courtesans and the city's leader house, unrelated of course. As you can tell, Corinth is pretty cool, and I haven't even mentioned the sacred cave yet. Akrokorinth, the city's Acropolis, is probably the highest in the game. The temple and fort at the top aren't much to speak of, but it's still a pretty unique feature, and you can't beat this view. If, after all this, you're still wondering why I placed Corinth above Argos on this list, it's actually for the story missions that take place here. I loved liberating the city from the clutches of the Monger. It's the kind of city that really grows on you, or at least it did on me. But Greece is a big place, and there's always somewhere else to explore. And so we arrive at number 1, Athens and the port of Piraeus. That's right, to the great surprise of nobody, Athens is my number 1 pick. Athens and its connected port, that is. Not only is Athens easily the largest city in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it's one of the largest cities in the whole series, with a combined area roughly equal to that of Constantinople in Assassin's Creed Revelations. I understand it's nowhere near as dense, of course, but for a game that people often complain about lacking urban environments, that's a pretty eye-opening fact. So, is Athens my number 1 just because of its size? Well, yeah, mostly, but let's look at a few other reasons too. Firstly, the Acropolis, the Parthenon. These are symbols of Greece, and Athens' Acropolis is the best in the game. It's surrounded by smaller temples, sculptures, monuments, and other public buildings as well. The Odeon of Pericles is pretty much the only Persian-style architecture in the game, so I had to shout it out. The Temple of Hephaestus is another famed landmark, and one that stands more or less to this day. It overlooks the Athenian Agora, which is itself one of the most impressive in the game. You also have the beautiful Garden of Hephaestus, the Theater of Dionysus, the Areopagus, the Pnyx, and more trade-focused districts than any other city on this list. Athens has it all. Well, except for Porneion, as far as I could tell, but besides exploration, Athens also offers a lot of gameplay. There are secure buildings to sneak into, forts to attack, secrets to discover, and side quests galore. Besides all that, Athens is also where you'll spend a fair bit of the story and meet a lot of the game's best characters. But Greater Athens is only half the story. The port of Piraeus is the largest port in the game, on its own, let alone being connected to Athens. Okay, so maybe Athens is more than half the story. While the port is easily large enough to land on this list of its own merits, I don't have as many fond gameplay memories here to call back to. Luckily, Greater Athens is here to carry it across the finish line. And that's my list. What did you think? Did my pick surprise you? Did your favorite city get snubbed? Let me know in the comments below. Believe it or not, I love to see your discussion on these types of things. And while you're there, let me know what you think about the world design of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I know a lot of longtime fans criticize the game for its empty landscapes and cookie-cutter locations, but I actually came away from the game with a completely opposite impression. I personally think Odyssey is the most detailed, most realized version of ancient Greece ever simulated in any piece of media. And while I can understand people's gripes with gameplay changes, leveling, and RPG elements, I've never understood how such an impressive world has gone so unappreciated by so much of the fan base. I don't know, maybe I'm way off base with that, but I hope this video helped to explain what I see when I look at these cities. And whether you agree with me or not, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, you might enjoy my previous video on the top 10 cities in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And yes, there are 10 cities in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Kind of, if you turn your head. Squint, that is. But before you go, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you find this kind of deep dive interesting. I spent 8 hours recording the footage for this video, only to find out it looked like this. So then I spent another 8 hours re-recording everything. Whether or not you think that deserves a like, entirely up to you. I won't force your hand. After all, I spent that time gladly in order to make this video, which I've been pretty excited about for a long time. Oh, and while I'm rambling, if you follow my channel for No Man's Sky content, thanks for checking this video out. I hope to dive into more games in a similar fashion when I find the time. Thank you for watching and supporting my channel. Every like, comment, and sub makes a noticeable impact for me and my channel, so I really appreciate everyone who's taken the time to help out. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios!